George Bailey is the epitome of selflessness. He saves his younger brother from drowning in ice water, damaging his own hearing permanently. He saves the druggist's reputation by refusing to deliver an accidental prescription of poison, which resulted in punishment before resolution via a hug. On his wedding day, he makes sure the locals can take small loans out, reassuring their money is safe in his hands, providing the key obstacle to the town's greedy millionaire businessman Potter. George Bailey feels very much like the perfect neighbour we all wish we had, yet the pressures begin to take their toll when he contemplates suicide on Christmas Eve. This is Frank Capra's classic It's a Wonderful Life, a film that may not initially seem like it when considering George Bailey's suicidal intention, but is considered in the present as a festive feel-good classic film. The film hadn't always received its celebrated status as a cinematic classic. The film was a financial flop on its initial release, but over the decades gradually gained a large, dedicated audience, making annual viewings of the film around the winter period mandatory. Roger Ebert explained the reason for this film's gradual rediscovery in his 1999 review of the film, stating that the best and worst things that ever happened to It's a Wonderful Life are that it fell out of copyright protection and into the shadowy no man's land of the public domain. Because the movie is no longer under copyright, any television station that can get its hands on a print of the movie can show it at no cost as often as it wants to, and that has led in the last decade to the rediscovery of Frank Capra's once forgotten film and its elevation into a Christmas tradition. PBS stations were the first to jump on the bandwagon in the early 1970s, using the saga of the small town hero George Bailey as counter-programming against expensive network holiday specials. To the general amazement of TV program directors, the audience for the film grew and grew over the years, until now many families make the movie an annual ritual. A film in the public domain screening on television networks annually, and with a mixture of this and word of mouth, the audience gradually grew. It's a Wonderful Life is a film that truly deserved its rediscovery, mixing gentle humour, light feel-good sentimentality, for example the genuine charisma between James Stewart's George Bailey and Donna Reed's Mary, who plays George's girlfriend and eventual wife, especially during scenes of youthful romance, like when George promises Mary he will lasso the moon for her, with personal tragedies such as the death of George Bailey's father, or the many ways which George Bailey must put his dreams of travel on a permanent hold. This makes George Bailey a likeable and understandable character, a character we may wish to strive to be more like by the film's ending. He may be a bit too likeable, but he isn't perfect, with his own personal flaws. When things become incredibly tough, he snaps at the children and wife, calling their home a drafty old barn, undermining the wife's efforts to turn an old abandoned house into a warming home. Even George Bailey has his limits. During the contemplation of his suicide on the town's bridge, an angel without his wings falls into the water after being sent to save George. The Christian-centric charms of the film may feel a little outdated by today's standards, but it intends to provide a positive and life-affirming message. Clarence is here to teach George about why George should appreciate the life he has, taking the highs with the lows. When George wishes he was never born, Clarence intends to show him the world without George Bailey. It's sleazier, teeming with hostility and the downtrodden. People George had helped before now no longer received his help, causing their lives to be for the worst. George's old boss, the druggist, was not stopped in his accidental prescription of poison and had lost his job, served 20 years in prison, and is now a bumbling alcoholic. George's own brother drowned in the ice water as a child, as George was not there to help him. With nobody to stop Potter from his influence and corruption, the town has gone downhill. This uglier version of existence intends to illustrate to George the good he brings to the world, and the positive influence he brings to the lives around him. It's also a universal sentiment intended to be shared with the viewers. Life just wouldn't be the same without you. Such a wholesome message behind this film is why it is considered so inviting and enticing a viewing on an annual basis. It's an important message that the film wants to remind us of, because from time to time we may all need that reminder that we bring light to someone out there. In conclusion, Frank Capra's It's a Wonderful Life, despite its struggle during its initial release, understandably gained an audience over the decades due to being an easy public domain film to slot into television network schedules, costing nothing to air. The positive of this is that millions of viewers are reminded of the endearing story of George Bailey, played by the always charismatic ever-charismatic James Stewart, and the life-affirming significant message that without him, and reflectively ourselves, in the world, life just wouldn't feel as wonderful.